Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Monday, March the 12th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and your first daily dose of happy for the day. Happy Monday, everybody. We say that every week because we mean it. It is a happy Monday. It's always a happy Monday. And it's especially happy today for those who like snow because we got more snow coming tomorrow. And for those who don't like snow, it's a happy Monday because the snow hasn't arrived yet. So it's happy either way.
We need snow out here. Why don't you send some out here? We've only had one good snowstorm the entire winter, and now it's just looking like more and more warm days and sunny days. And boy, we've had so much of that. It's not the Colorado I've ever known.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm not sure what to expect from this snowstorm because we had another storm last week, of course, and that storm gave us about something like 8, 9, 10 inches, something like that. Mm-hmm. By the end of the day, that 8, 9, 10 inches had melted down to 2. Oh. I mean, it melted fast. In between. Yeah. It melted really, really fast. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with this one, but they're telling us we could get over 10 inches, which tells me that we could get like 14 inches, and then it could be gone by that evening.
Wow. That sounds like what Colorado used to be like.
Oh, okay.
We used to get these storms, and then they would melt pretty quickly. And but now we're just not getting the storms at all. So we need water.
Well, yeah. you got to do like what Esther Hicks did. Remember the story about how she wanted to attract rain? You just got to, you
quit talking about rain. What I don't have. Talk about what I.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, that's how everything works. But
I know.
Sometimes the old habits, you think that I should worry about it. That I don't have water instead of. Actually, what I do sometimes is I put on on Spotify. I put on these. Stations that have nothing but the sound of rain falling, and they're really cool because I love that sound. And so if I'm concerned about water, I just put that on and I just listen because I live in a drought-prone state, but you might as well. I mean, I feel like if I want the rain to come, I just put on the music of the rain and listen to that, and it seems to help.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, especially if you
believe a better place than the place of sitting there and lamenting, like, where's the moisture? These trees are going to die,
Yeah, that doesn't do anybody any good, including you.
No, including the trees.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. So how was your weekend? Did you have a good time?
I had a really good time. The family got together. I have this great big giant family where there's about 45 of us that live in the Denver, Colorado area.
Wow.
And we're all extended family. So when they come together, it's a pretty fun time because everybody loves everybody a lot, and there's just a lot of happiness. And so we had a great big family get together for my sister's 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, happy 50th to your sister. That's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Really yeah.
And how about you?
It was a good weekend. I was finally able to do some editing on this book that we've been promising people is going to come out. Which is good because I haven't been able to do any for the last couple of weeks, most of which was because of the computer issue that I had that I since have eliminated by buying a new computer. But unfortunately, buying a new computer didn't eliminate the backlog of work that needed to be done, so I had to get that done first. But
you couldn't just give all the work to the computer.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? Like, okay, here you go, computer, you get to it. I'll get another one if you're not doing it.
I wish. They do a lot for us, though.
They do. Oh, they do.
Compared
it's huge.
To the old days.
And I appreciate it very much. But it was great. I got to sit down and start going through some of the stories that I hadn't gone through yet and clean up some stuff and so forth. So, yeah, it was in fact, it was so good on Sunday that normally we do the podcast at 11 a.m., and I started working on the editing around 8 a.m. Of course, it was, daylight savings had kicked into gear, so it was actually, an hour ahead. Yeah. But nevertheless, I got to work on it, and like an hour later, I'd made good progress and so forth. I said, okay, I'm going to dive into this. So I dove into it, and then all of a sudden, my cell phone rang, and when I picked up the phone to see who was calling me, I found it was David. He says, "Are you going to get on the podcast?" I looked at the clock; it was 11:01. Like, oh my god!
Gee, hey, are you going to do this today? The podcast, yeah.
Oops. So, but we had a good podcast. It was a good one.
That's when you know you've got a lot going on.
The other thing that I worked on was Wendy had pointed out to me at the end of last week that the music was not playing properly on the recordings. We were hearing it just fine, but on the recordings there was an echo going on, and it made it sound funky. So I took a look at the settings and realized why the current settings were causing that, and messed around with a whole bunch of new ones, and now I've got the new ones, and I think it's working properly. So this is a good day.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So
awesome.
We are talking about Seth. We're not talking about Abraham. We're talking about Seth, who came before Abraham in the chronology of human time. And
right.
we kind of started the book, The Nature of Things. Is that what it's called?
The Nature of Personal Reality.
Personal reality, that's what it is, right.
Specific practical techniques for solving everyday problems and enriching the life you know. Channeled by Jane Roberts back in the 70s. This was 1974.
Right.
This entire book was dictated by Seth, and Jane goes into a trance to receive the information, and then she speaks in a very strange voice. But
yeah, they are not comfortable recordings to listen to. I mean, it sounds like something out of a horror movie or something. But
right, but the book's but the book reads just as if it was dictated, just totally normally.
Yeah, without having some sort of weird computer generated voice or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But we did get into it a bit and started chapter 1. Where are we in chapter 1 right now?
We're on the second half. There's just a few more pages to finish chapter 1.
Okay, so we can finish that.
But
maybe
we've been going
2.
relatively slow because the concepts seem like they take a bit of.
They're pretty dense. Yeah, that's true. They really are. That's all right. That's part of the fun. So, take us along there. Where are we next?
Okay, so they're beginning to talk here. They're saying that they actually take breaks where Seth will speak for a little bit, and then he'll invite the Jane and her husband to take a break because her husband was writing everything in shorthand, so that he could keep track of everything. So they've just come back together, and this is what he says: your experience in the world of physical matter flows outward from the center of your inner psyche. Then you perceive this experience. Exterior events, circumstances, and conditions are meant as a kind of living feedback. Altering the state of the psyche automatically alters the physical circumstances. There is no other valid way of changing physical events. It might help if you imagine an inner living dimension within yourself in which you create, in miniature psychic form, all of the exterior conditions that you know. Simply put, you do exactly this. Your thoughts, feelings, and mental pictures can be called incipient exterior events, for in one way or another, each of these is materialized into physical reality. You change even the most permanent seeming conditions of your life constantly through the varying attitudes you have towards them. There is nothing in your exterior experience that did not originate within you. Interactions with others do occur, of course, yet there are none that you do not accept or draw to you by your thoughts, attitudes, or emotions. This applies to each area of life. In your terms, it applies both before life and after life. In the most miraculous fashion, you are given the gift of creating your experience. In this existence, you are learning to handle the inexhaustible energy that is available to you. The mass condition of the world and the situation of each individual in it is the materialization of man's progress as he forms his world. The joy of creativity flows through you as effortlessly as your breath. From it, the most minute areas of your outer experience spring. Your feelings have electromagnetic realities that rise outward, affecting the atmosphere itself. They group through attraction, building up areas of events and circumstances that finally coalesce, so to speak, either in matter as objects or as events in time.
So they're essentially saying the same things that Abraham says, but in a completely different way.
I think they're saying it in just a very more methodical, clear, just laying it out how clearly we're creating every bit of reality that we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we're experiencing. Just how precisely we're the only ones doing it. Although they do say, you meet other people, but that it's all originating within our inner psyche somehow.
Louise and I were talking last night about the nature of reality as it in the idea of it as us being the creators of it, and that we're constantly recreating this pencil and that door and that wall and so forth, and trying to get our heads around that, because that's a heck of a concept. I mean, I don't care who's teaching it, Abraham or Seth or anyone. That's a heck of a concept. And trying to come to terms with it, trying to come to terms with the fact that the reason this pen is a pen is because I continue to think it's a pen. Whoa. Wait a minute. Hold on here. You mean it can't be a pen independently of me? No, apparently not. But that's hard to get your head around.
Yeah. We're sort of like this little generator broadcaster who's creating everything and then perceiving everything and then interacting with everything. And I was asking myself after our show on Friday, where we read the first part of this book, does any of this help me or help others? Does it help to know the fact that you create everything? And I think I started to realize that I think it does, because it's just a new idea, and that's why it seems like we might want to question it. But in reality, the more that I sit with the fact that I'm creating everything, the more I can not take it all so seriously, for one thing, and then also begin to understand the fact that I'm in a lot more control here than I've ever accepted. That I have a lot more potential to shape the way my life unfolds. And then I started reading forward in this book and realizing that he spends the rest of this book explaining to you how you can take, you might say, full control of the fact that you're creating everything through your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And that just how beliefs are formed so early in childhood, or we bring them from past lives, and how we really can deal with them in a whole new way. That's what I'm excited about. It's, because I think the reason that I feel sometimes trapped at all by my circumstances is because I don't understand that I'm creating them, with my beliefs. And I can sometimes feel like I'm a victim of my own beliefs.
Oh, I think we all do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what this book is about, freeing you from being a victim of your beliefs and putting you really a lot more in control of the fact that, you can alter all this stuff, like Abraham talks about it constantly, Every single bit that Abraham says is about how we can alter our personal reality.
And even more being a prisoner of our own beliefs, we're a prisoner, in a bigger sense of the reality. It's like we really don't feel like we have control over reality. And when someone introduces to us the concept, reality is created by your thoughts, and the law of attraction is what brings whatever you're thinking about, or the essence of it, to you, in either in thought form or in reality, if you think about it long enough. Well, that's in and of itself, that's a tough thing. But then you start adding to it the idea that we create all the stuff that's already here. This whole thing, the planet, the universe, the stars, the rocks, the trees, and then add in the idea that each one of those things, including rocks and trees, have points of consciousness. And now all of a sudden the mind is way beyond bent. Now it's like folded over on top of itself, because it's just so wild, so crazy. Yeah. Like, oh my God, how can that possibly be?
Yeah. Or that you're an infinite being, and that everything that somehow all of this, how you do all of it, and how it all works, and that you're the one who's originating it. And it's like, wow, well then why would I put myself, like I said last podcast, why would I put myself in such a dense reality where I forget all this? Why would I have this amnesia?
Yeah, what's the point of that? That's kind of crazy.
And then you have to have somebody come from this other dimension and write whole books try to explain to you what you're doing. You're going, oh, why don't I just understand it if I'm the same as Seth? Why do I need Seth to tell me?
And if all that's true, isn't it true that this whole life is just foobar and that it's just a mess? That's what it seems when you first get exposed to this stuff.
That's right. It can seem like that too. That, like I told you, this guy who does this out of body travel of this book that I'm reading, William Buhlman, he talks about this realm as being, something that is sort of like the stupidest realm or something. I mean, I almost get that feeling when he talks, that he just is anxious to get back out of a body to get to these other realms, because this realm is so dense to deal with. He almost looks at this realm as sort of like a big classroom, that a big learning situation, but it's not as clear as these other realms. You're not as clearly a being of light. You're going through all these learning experiences here, but why? Why would I want to go through all kinds of, ups and downs and joys and sorrows? And of course you can say, well, there's some real beauty to all of this, and the more that we understand it, the more we maybe start perceiving that this is a really incredible ride. This is an incredible journey I'm on. And that's what you're trying to get to, is the appreciation.
Well, also Abraham deliberately contradicts that belief. That belief that this is like kindergarten or something like that, and right. they state quite convincingly and quite firmly, oh no, this is the leading edge of reality here. This is the one that everything else is looking at. All of non-physical reality, all non-physical beings are looking here. Their eyes are here, so to speak.
Yeah. And Seth might go on to say that in this book.
Probably will, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, seeing as how Jerry and Esther read this, or were into this Seth stuff supposedly before they started channeling Abraham. I don't know how that all went down.
Well, all I do know is that if this is leading edge, and if this is where all the eyes are, then perhaps television on the other side isn't any better than it is on this side.
Oh God, don't even say that.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh no, and there's some good shows on that. People are really enjoying it. So many friends, oh, did you watch this series? Oh, did you watch that series? I mean, anyway,
it's funny.
I don't watch too many of those series, but I have, and I've really enjoyed some of them. Okay, so let me read a little more, maybe.
Yep.
Okay, so did you know that some feelings and thoughts are translated into structures that you call objects? These exist in your terms, in a medium that you call space. Others are translated instead into psychological structures called events that seem to exist in a medium that you call time. Space and time are both root assumptions, which simply means that man accepts both and assumes that his reality is rooted in a series of moments and a dimension of space. So your inner experience is translated in those terms. Even the duration of an event or object in space and time is determined by the intensity of the thoughts and emotions that gave it birth. Duration in space is not the same as duration in time, however, though it may seem that this is the case. I'm speaking in your terms now. An event or object that exists briefly in space may have a much greater duration in time. It may have far greater importance and intensity existing in your memory, for example, long after it has disappeared in space. Such an event or object does not merely exist symbolically within your mind or memory, but in your terms, its actual reality continues as a time event. Nor is its reality in space annihilated as long as it exists within your mind. Let's take a very simple example. A child has been told not to play with a doll. The order is disobeyed. The child, wittingly or unwittingly, breaks the doll, and it is finally thrown away. The doll exists in time quite vitally as long as the child, or the adult-to-be, remembers it. If the doll sat on a bureau, and this is also vividly recalled, then the space in which the doll sat still carries the impression of the doll, though other objects may be placed there. You react, therefore, not only to what is visible in your physical eyes in space, or to what is directly in front of you in time, but also to objects and events whose reality is still with you, even though they may seem to have disappeared. Basically, you create your experience through your beliefs about yourself and the nature of reality. Another way to understand this is to realize that you create your experiences through your expectations. Your feeling tones are your emotional attitudes towards yourself and life in general, and these generally govern the large areas of experience. They give the overall emotional coloration that characterizes what happens to you, period. You are what happens to you. Your emotional feelings are often transitory, but beneath there are certain qualities of feeling uniquely your own that are like deep musical chords. While your day-to-day feelings may rise or fall, these characteristic feeling tones lie beneath. Sometimes they rise to the surface, but in great long rhythms. You cannot call these negative or positive. They are instead tones of your being. They represent the most inner portion of your experience. This does not mean that they are hidden from you or are meant to be. It simply means that they represent the core from which you form your experience.
Interesting point there. They're neither negative nor positive.
Yeah, these deep inner tones are somehow, this emotional coloration. I mean, it's almost like there's something deeper than just the surface things that we deal with a lot. There's these deeper underlying emotional tones. I don't understand it, but it sounds amazing.
I guess if we take the Abrahamic concept that emotion is what happens when there are variations in the alignment between our physical selves and our inner being selves, if that's what emotion is, then what Seth is suggesting is that kind of emotional response doesn't occur in response to these tones. Why that would be, I'm not sure, but that seems to be what, if we combine the two teachings together, that seems to be what it adds up to.
Mm-hmm. Their feeling tones are your emotional attitudes towards yourself and life in general, and they govern the large areas of experience. If you've become afraid of emotion or the expression of feeling, or if you've been taught that the inner self is no more than a repository of uncivilized impulses, then you may have the habit of denying this deep rhythm. You may try to operate as if it did not exist, or even try to refute it. But it represents your deepest, most creative impulses. To fight against it is like trying to swim upstream against a strong current.
That's a very Abrahamic concept also, the upstream-downstream concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's also in the Council of Radiant Light, these other beings that are translated that I read and listen to sometimes, they talk about how each of us has this signature self, they call it. And that's something that we really want to get to know in this lifetime. They say, and it's almost like reminds me of this, it's your signature emotional tones. We talked about that last podcast, that many indigenous cultures believe that the entire universe is being sung into existence. So
that's right. Yeah, we did mention that, didn't we?
Again, I think maybe this is a little bit about this. We have this, each of us is a combination of these feeling tones and they underlie our basic self-expression, who we basically show up as here. Because each one of us is uniquely different. So each one of us is vibrating with different feeling tones. He said, these feeling tones pervade your being. They are the form your spirit takes when combined with flesh. From their core, your flesh arises. Everything that you experience has consciousness, and each consciousness is endowed with its own feeling tone. So everything we experience has its own feeling tone. There is great cooperation involved in the formation of the earth as you think of it, and so the individual living structures of the planet rise up from the feeling tone within each atom and molecule. Your flesh springs about you in response to these inner chords of your being, and the trees, rocks, seas, and mountains spring up as the body of the earth from the deep inner chords within the atoms and molecules, which are also living. Because of the creative cooperation that exists, the miracle of physical materialization is performed so smoothly and automatically that consciously you are not aware of your part in it. The feeling tone, then, is the motion and fiber, the timbre, the portion of your energy devoted to your physical experience. Now it flows into what you are as a physical being and materializes you in the world of seasons, space, flesh, and time. Its source, however, is quite independent of the world that you know.
So this whole concept of tones, it seems to be the Seth word for vibration.
Yeah, in a way it does. Uh-huh.
I mean, tones certainly do have vibration. Any sound tone has a vibration that's easily measured on an oscilloscope. So we know that for certain.
Hmm.
And it sounds like they're using the word tone to imply that vibration, that oscillation.
Yes, I think that's a guy would say that too.
Yeah, okay.
It's so amazing that I could imagine a Hollywood movie where, there's this tone, and then from that tone you watch the flesh come and the whole body like materialize, the bones and the flesh. It all just comes out of this tone. But it's funny when you think about how everything could be being sustained by these vibrations, these oscillations but then they build the body, they build the flesh, they build the rocks, they build the trees, and so it's all this illusion sustained by atoms and molecules, but behind it all, it's just tone. It's pretty wild.
I was thinking about that last night when we were trying to explore the whole concept of, thought creating everything at all times continuously. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was asking myself, what does vibration look like? I mean, clearly I'm probably not using the right idea because it's a sense, one of the five sense organs, and vibration seems to be independent of senses. But nevertheless, we do know that light does come in waves. It also comes in
Mm-hmm.
quanta, but it comes in waves. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's an oscillation going on there. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not too big of a stretch of the imagination to say that vibration is detectable by the eyes. So, okay, I kind of validated my question. I asked myself, so what does it look like? And part of the answer that came to me is, well, it looks like what it normally looks like, because when we see light on something, we don't see it as like this vibration. It's just light. It's just like a solid thing that hits something and illuminates it, right? There's no vibration that we see there
Mm-hmm.
tangibly. On the other hand, I also tried to look like at that moment I was looking at my wife. So I tried to look at my wife and imagine what if I could actually see the vibration part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest I was able to come to an answer, so to speak, is I saw her face as if, how do I say this? As if there were slight tonal variations going on at a very rapid pace throughout her face, throughout the shape of her outline and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So once I put it together that way, then I said to myself, okay, well, if I can kind of use that as an image in my mind and perhaps apply it to other things I'm looking at, maybe I can get a better handle on how this tone, this vibration is creating everything at all times. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if my little model actually works, but it gives me a starting point, and it makes me wonder if I can start looking at everything in that way, can I start to get a better appreciation of exactly how this tone, this vibration works by observing it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, part of me says, well, you're just deluding yourself, and part of me says, maybe you're onto something.
Well, William Bielman in his Out of Body Travel talks about the different layers he's gone through, and that the first layer, the most amazing thing that blew his mind was that he would float up to the ceiling out of his body, and then his hand all of a sudden he would realize was going through the ceiling, and then just seeing that it's all vibration. Then he started eventually to realize he's in another dimension where it's not exactly the same ceiling, it's not exactly the same walls of his bedroom, but it looks like it. But then he's in this other dimension, and where he can put his body through things. He can pass right through his front door. And then as he goes into these other layers, then it's even more thought. Second he thinks anything, he's there. He wants to be in some big open meadow, and he's instantly there. And so, what it's like, this Seth is saying, it's quite independent of the world that and they talk so much about how we can only think of things in terms of what we know when we're in this realm, of what we consider solid and what we consider time and space. But anyway, yeah, maybe the way you're beginning to perceive it is the direction to go.
It might be. I don't know. I figure it's interesting, if nothing else. And maybe it
Well,
doesn't
yeah.
pan out. Maybe it doesn't actually bear any fruit, but it's kind of a fun start.
I think we're constantly getting guided also, whether or not, I've learned to quit quit looking at my experiences as dismissible, or that I just minimize them or something, say, oh, that doesn't mean anything. Because I think the other realms are constantly trying to communicate with us, or they are communicating with us. And if we listen more closely and we're more astute about what we're receiving and what we're allowing, like Abraham said, 100% of our job here is our receptivity. So to being receptive to well-being is how we function on this realm. So how receptive can we get? Maybe your receptivity to perceiving these feeling tones, these vibrations, this vibrational world is going to lead you more and more into knowing who you really are as your real infinite self.
Well, it's hopeful. I'll just say that. Beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah.
So go ahead, continue.
It says, once you learn to get the feeling of your own inner tone, then you are aware of its power, strength, and durability. Well, that's exactly what we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, to some extent, ride with it into deeper realities of experience. There you go. It just answers exactly what we were saying.
Oh.
The incredible emotional richness and variety and splendor of physical experience is the material reflection of this inner feeling tone. It pervades the events in your life, the overall inner direction, the quality of perception. It fills up and illuminates the individual aspects of your life and largely determines the pervasive subjective climate in which you dwell.
Let me ask you something here, because something else occurred to me. A tone generally is monotonal, meaning that it doesn't generally vary the way we use the word tone. A tone is usually just a single tone, whereas music is a variety of tones. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder, in what way are they using the word? Are they using it as a single tone, or are they using it as a variety of tones?
Yeah, and maybe it's something beyond what we know as tone. Like on the electromagnetic spectrum, how you've seen that picture of the light spectrum, mm-hmm. and there's this one area on the spectrum, like let's say that if you drew a picture of it and it covers 3 feet, the whole, everything that science knows about the electromagnetic wave spectrum of light, and then there's this one little band in there where the colors that we see exist, mm-hmm. And the things that we can perceive with our eyes exist in this narrow band, and then there's all this other infrared light and all this other ultraviolet light, but it's more and more and more. And so what I've heard it explained is that in the same way, we're only perceiving this narrow band through our eyes and ears and our senses here, our brains and everything, but there's so much more going on, So
basically what you just said is that I really have my task cut out for me and the odds are against me.
Yeah, but yet you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's the thing that I think is the most amazing thing. That's why William Buhlman in his book Adventures Out of the Body says the entire new frontier of exploration is to go within. He said it's just like the same way explorers used to want to get in a boat and travel the oceans to find out if they would fall off the end of the world or if they would, where it would take them, in the same way that man now wants to go out into space or, deeper and deeper into the bottom of the ocean and all these different things. But in reality, the real adventure is to go into these other realms of our vibrational nature of who we really are by going within. And then here's this book, Seth is saying everything's originating from within.
Yeah.
That's where the whole universe exists.
Okay. Well, now that the mind is completely bent, where do we go next with it?
Let's see, there's a little bit more here. It is the essence of yourself. And they're talking about the feeling tone. Its sweeps are broad in range, however. It does not determine, for example, specific events. It paints the colors in the large landscape of your experience. It is the feeling of yourself, inexhaustible. In other terms, it represents the expression of yourself in pure energy from which your individuality rises, the you of you, unmistakably given identity that is never duplicated. That's that your unique signature thing. So your feeling tone is your unique signature, the expression of yourself in pure energy out of which your individuality rises, and never duplicated. This energy comes from the core of being, from all that is, and represents the source of never-ending vitality. It is being in you. And they're putting being in all capitals. As such, all the energy and power of being is focused and reflected through you in the direction of your three-dimensional existence. While your feeling tone is uniquely yours, still it is expressed in a certain fashion that is shared by all consciousnesses focused in physical reality. So in those terms, you spring from the earth as all the other creatures and natural living structures. You are, while physical, a portion of nature, therefore not apart from it. Trees and rocks possess their own consciousness and also share a Gestalt consciousness, even as the living portions of your body. The cells and organs have their own awareness and a Gestalt one. So the race of man also has individual consciousness and a Gestalt or mass consciousness of which you individually are hardly aware. The mass race consciousness, in its terms, possesses an identity. You are a portion of that identity while still being unique, individual, and independent. You are confined only to the extent that you have chosen physical reality and so placed yourself within its context of experience. While physical, you follow physical laws or assumptions. These form the framework for corporeal expression. Within this framework, you have full freedom to create your experience, your personal life in all of its aspects, the living picture of the world. Your personal life and to some extent your individual living experience help create the world as it is known in your time. In this book, we will be speaking about your own subjective world and your part in the creation of events, both private and shared. It is important before we continue that you realize that consciousness is within all physical phenomena, however. It is vital that you realize your position within nature. Nature is created from within. The personal life that you know rises up from within you, yet it is given, period.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Louise and I talked about last night. Consciousness in a rock, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a rock is conscious.
Mm-hmm.
I presume that means that the rock is alive. I mean, doesn't consciousness also mean alive?
Well, to me it does.
It does to me as well. I have
it means
trouble
intelligent.
Yeah. So if that's true, that means some non-physical entity decided to become a rock. And my question is why?
I don't know how that all works.
This is true. That's part of the problem.
However, I loved when I was studying a lot about shamanism and indigenous cultures, how it's very common for them to speak to rocks, and to have interaction with rocks and to go inside of rocks, to go right into them and have experiences. There's a number of Native American myths where they talk about going inside of rocks. And it's a world that we do not understand. I mean, there is a lot more to it, I think, than we could ever imagine. I know that in some indigenous cultures, the rocks are the ones that hold the collective memories of the earth. And if you want to know about this whole concept of time, and all that's occurred, talk to rocks. But how that all works.
Geologists would agree with that.
Yeah, they would.
Not quite the same way, perhaps, but
no, not quite.
But oh my goodness, yeah. So rocks are basically the memory cells of storage of the mass database, which is another thing that I brought up.
One
yesterday.
way I've heard it explained by indigenous people. I mean, sort of like that. And I wouldn't even claim to have an understanding of what they're talking about, because from what I can tell, lots of indigenous cultures have been living in another reality than what we call this reality.
Well, I've learned over the last few years that I don't have to understand something in order to talk about it. I've proved it over and over again.
Yeah, no, you can definitely talk about it. I just want to be extremely respectful of their beliefs and not assume that I know anything about what they really think and how they really experience these things, because
Oh, sure, yeah.
until I can say I've experienced it, then it's a lot of it is conjecture.
Well, it's all conjecture. I mean, until you experience it, it's all conjecture. It has to.
Yeah, right.
The thing that I was conjecturing about this idea of a massive database of knowledge is that there's a little problem with it being a single database. I suspect that it's actually a multitude of databases, and perhaps even one database for each point of consciousness. So like billions and trillions and unlimited zillions of databases. And the reason I say that is I was asking myself, what happens if you have two or more beings interacting with one particular datum in the database, and two of them are saying it's green and the third one says it's blue? That's a little problematic, you know? But if you've got three different databases, then you can have two greens and one blue for the same datum.
Yeah, and in that book, Seth Speaks, a little bit I just heard some reading of that book on YouTube videos, audios. They talk about how even at night, you know, like for example, when we're asleep, in our deepest sleep, our consciousness is going and doing all kinds of other things in other universes, in other people's lives. We may be living other lives, a completely different person, but it's all related to our feeling tone, and it is all connected to who we are as a individual signature infinite consciousness. But that the levels of the different parallel universes and realities that we can be playing in simultaneously, we don't have any idea. That's what Seth said. Said there's all kinds of things going on.
And this is one of the very few times so far, anyway, that I've noticed that there is a discrepancy between what Seth says and what Abraham says. Because Abraham very clearly states that when we're asleep, we are not attracting. But attraction is a fundamental basis of the universe, right? And according to what Seth's saying, we're going all the places and we're doing stuff, so that means we're attracting. So which one's correct? I don't know.
I don't know.
I
don't know
idea
if there's really any discrepancy, but there could be. I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly looks like a discrepancy. If it's not one, I'd like somebody to explain to me why it's not a discrepancy, but that's probably a little bit premature at this point. So go ahead, continue what you were saying and what you were reading.
Okay. So let's see. They said that they were saying the personal life that you know rises up from within you, yet it is given, period. I'm not sure what that means. Yet it is given, period. Since you are a part of being, then in a certain fashion, you give yourself the life that is being lived through you. You make your own reality. There is no other rule. Knowing this is the secret of creativity.
You better reread that section. If it's that important, let's reread it. Let's go over it once more.
Okay. It is vital that you realize your position within nature. Nature is created from within. The personal life that you know rises up from within you, yet it is given, period. Since you are a part of being, then in a certain fashion you give yourself the life that is being lived through you. You make your own reality. There is no other rule. Knowing this is the secret of creativity.
So it really just comes down to we create our own realities, and this is always true, except that in some sense that they aren't defining yet, it's also given to us.
Yeah, that's the part I don't, and I suppose they will explain that.
I hope so, because right now it's a little nebulous.
Right. What do they mean given? Yeah. I have spoken of you, yet this must not be confused with the you that you often think you are, the ego alone, for the ego is only a portion of you. It is that expert part of your personality that deals directly with the contents of your conscious mind, and is concerned most directly with the material portions of your experience. The ego is a very specialized portion of your greater identity. It is a portion of you that arises to deal directly with the life that the larger you is living. And when they say the larger you, they capitalize that you. And otherwise, it's a small you. The ego can feel cut off, lonely, and frightened, however, if the conscious mind lets the ego run away with it. The ego and the conscious mind are not the same thing. The ego is composed of various portions of the personality. It's a combination of characteristics, ever changing. that act in unitary fashion, the portion of the personality that deals most directly with the world. The conscious mind is an excellent perceiving attribute, a function that belongs to inner awareness, but in this case is turned outward towards the world of events. Through the conscious mind, the soul looks outward. Left alone, it perceives clearly. In certain terms, the ego is the eye through which the conscious mind perceives, or the focus through which it views physical reality. But the conscious mind automatically changes its focus throughout life. The ego, while appearing the same to itself, ever changes. It is only when the conscious mind becomes rigid in its direction or allows the ego to take on some of its own functions that difficulties arise. Then the ego allows the conscious mind to work in certain directions and blocks its awareness in others.
Now, as you're reading that, I'm taking in what it's saying, but there's also a piece of me that's saying, wow, this is really abstract stuff.
Well, you know what it makes me think, is that, and I read on into chapter 2 thinking, this gets too abstract, it's, I don't know if you want to say too abstract, but it's like, it's a level of analysis, you might say, of how it all works. That's like you're starting to become an engineer.
Yeah.
You're going, this is very, very complicated. That you've got these different functions that are taking place, and they're all in the realm of perception and who you are and how it all works. And then you think of the Abraham channeled stuff, and it's like, it's just simple, straightforward, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah. And plus there's another aspect of it too. Yes, it's very abstract and it's a very full abstraction and so forth. But the thing that I keep noticing is it's all surrounding this concept of a tone, right? And of a tone that is a feeling tone. Mm-hmm. But what's the one thing that's lacking from this entire description? Feeling. There's no description of feeling in here at all. We're painting, or Seth is painting for us, this great big structure, and there's nothing in it that we feel as we're hearing it. I'm just struck by the fact that it is so abstract and so lacking in anything that helps us to connect in a feeling wise to it, in a feeling way. And I think that's why it feels so overwhelming.
Yeah, it's one thing. I don't know if I said it on the podcast before, but I have these good friends that introduced me to Abraham the very first time I heard about Abraham in 2006, 2007. And I said to them not too long ago, I said, are you still really are you into Abraham? And they said, no, we don't really listen that much anymore. And I said, why? They said, it's just not enough of heart in it. It's not enough feeling. We just need something that has more just connection to the heart and to feeling, just to love, And I thought to myself, people have told me I'm a pretty heady guy in the past. And I'm thinking, maybe it is that I'm drawn to things that go deep into explanations of things, but where's the feeling, And do I arrive where I want to arrive at through so much understanding of things? Do I arrive at the state of feeling that I want to arrive at, which is to feel great love and have great fun and to have great freedom and great ease in my life? And those things are related to feeling good, which Abraham talks about a lot.
That's what they do talk about. And I think that your friends, I understand where they're coming from, but I think your friends are doing a disservice to Abraham, because Abraham goes into a lot of detail about feeling.
I kind of came to that conclusion too.
And the way I know that it in a really strong way is by comparing it to what Seth is saying, which gives us no feeling, at least so far. I mean, we obviously are only in chapter 1, but so far feeling has barely been touched upon. The closest that we've come to it is this word tone, and that's it.
Well, I'm going to read you the last paragraph of this chapter and listen to this.
Oh, all right.
And so it is from your larger identity that you form the reality that you know. It is up to you to do this with joy and vigor.
They finally brought it in. Okay.
Clearing your conscious mind so that the deeper knowledge of your greater identity can form joyous expressions in the world of the flesh. And that's the end of the chapter. So the very thing you were questioning, they addressed in their very last paragraph.
Be careful what you wish for; it'll come true.
Well, I noticed that each time you ask about something, then the next paragraph.
There it is, right?
So I think we must be tuned into something.
There's something going on there. But wow, yeah, it will be interesting to see if Seth goes into more detail about the feeling aspect of things. I hope that is what Seth does.
Yeah,
because otherwise it starts to get really, really heavy. Otherwise,
well, I don't. That's what I was questioning, whether to continue to read this for our audience and ourselves, as to whether or not it's fun for everybody. Because this has got to be not only revealing in a beautiful way about who we are and what we're doing here, and helping us to live. Because this book is called The Nature of Personal Reality, Specific Practical Techniques for Solving Everyday Problems and Enriching the Life You Know. So it's supposed to be about enriching the life we know.
So perhaps once we get past the structure section, maybe we actually get into the meat and potatoes of it.
Well, that's why I'm reading ahead. I want to, because I have not read this whole book before, and I've read up now to page 65 or so, because I want to see, is it a good idea to continue to read this to our audience?
Well, there's another way we can possibly approach it, and you'll know better because you're the one doing the reading, or the reading ahead anyway. It might be worthwhile to take like a chapter and instead of reading it verbatim, summarize it. Bring in all the elements together in a way that is more conducive to the way you and I normally talk and the other people on this planet normally talk. Because if we can do that, and I suspect we'll be able to tie in the emotions and the feelings, we'll be able to tie in the expressions of activity and all this other stuff, and we'll be able to do it through storytelling, which you and I already know is pretty much the most effective way of communicating with other humans. So if we can find a way to find a way to turn it into stories, I think we're ultimately going to probably do the most service. But you'll have to be able to tell us rather than me make that determination, because you're the one who has the book.
Well, I'll try to decide for our Tuesday night call-in show what we want to continue with. But one thing I thought of doing by reading ahead was certain sections are particularly easy to assimilate and more juicy, I noticed. And and you know how it is with Abraham, you can open an Abraham book to anywhere you want to and start reading, and you're getting the whole story. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You're getting the same message everywhere you read. And I'm seeing in the reading ahead in this book, it's similar. It's just a little bit more heady in trying to understand these concepts. But they do have periods. For example, there's a whole story of their two cats that Jane Roberts and her husband have, and how these cats begin to react in response to the feeling states that Jane and her husband are going through as they channel the Seth material. And Seth is explaining to them what's going on with the cats and how it's all about feelings. It's all about the feelings that that Jane and her husband are going through, because they're having their reality altered. And but the cats are reflecting back to them all this stuff. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because that animals are plugged into us in a whole other way.
Well, I know that right now because my cat right now is trying to get in the door of the room that I'm doing the broadcast from and scratching at the door trying to get in here. So the connection is definitely there. No doubt about it.
It's probably because I just mentioned the other cats.
That probably did. I mean, as soon as you're saying that, there she is scratching. I can hear her. So yeah, I'd say let's go with definitely tie in the stories no matter what we decide. Whether you decide to continue with the reading or not continue with the reading, bring in the stories, because the stories make things a lot easier to understand.
Yes, they do. So yeah, we'll have to just decide. And then also, it made me think about how much I was getting out of doing the Abraham portions, right? Each time we would do one on a different thing, like one on aging, or one on, attracting money into your life, and one on illness. Well, it's different when you're having a direct discussion about something that's really relevant to what you're going through in your life than it is to understand the underpinnings of everything. But I like understanding how reality is shaped and what we're doing here, because then I think that helps me address the things I call my life situations, my life problems, my life, what I'm trying to accomplish here on the earth.
Oh, I do too. I feel the same way because I want to know how it's all put together.
Yeah.
It's interesting to know how stuff is put together, but it's also much more interesting to explore how stuff is put together in story context. So if we can combine those two things together, you know, that's where I think we're going to have the real strength. And that's the part I look forward to because clearly Seth has a different perspective. It's largely the same material. It's largely the same information. We've only found one potential discrepancy so far. Maybe there are others. Probably, I would imagine, because different perspectives have different perspectives, different ways of looking at things. So there are going to be differences. But nevertheless, there does seem to be something worth exploring here. The question is, can we turn it into something that's, you know, fun, entertaining, and informative at the same time? And I think we can. I think we could do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of doing it.
Right. So how do you get all these stories? You mean stories that I find in the book?
Right, yeah, stories in the book primarily, and then secondarily, well, I'm sure that once we start seeing how the concepts get applied in the stories as told in the book, we'll be able to draw from our own stories, our own personal lives and our experiences and so forth. And now the ideas will start to become more real for all of us, both listeners and co-hosts as well. Because that's what we need. We need context. We need something that feels normal to us, you know?
No, I just turned ahead and just randomly opened to a page, and it's an entire 2 pages I'm looking at in front of me are a story.
Oh, good.
You know, about a woman that actually it looks like Seth is making the story up. Oh,
that's all right.
I think no, Jane Roberts had received a call from a woman that was in distress in her 30s, divorced with 3 children, this section, Seth is saying everything that happened. It's sort of like when Abraham says Esther had this experience, and Abraham starts explaining the whole experience that Esther has. This is one that Jane Roberts had an experience, and now Seth is explaining this whole experience around this lady that Seth decides to, this young woman I will call Andrea. She's a lovely young blonde. I would like to use this instance as an excellent example of the ways in which conscious beliefs affect your feelings and behavior. So then this is the whole story that goes on for several pages about how her beliefs create her reality, and what then Jane advises Andrea to do
based on what Seth's teaching. Okay, well that's reasonable. That sounds like it has a lot of potential. So something we can carry on Tuesday night when we continue. That's our pattern now, to continue the Monday morning discussion on Tuesday night.
Yeah, that's our pattern. And if it doesn't seem to work out, and we sure invite our listeners to please let us know if this material is boring the heck out of you and making you not want to listen as much, because we want to offer you the best we can in terms of what is exciting and helpful to you in your life.
And we will.
Walt and I have this really great longing to understand the deeper realm of reality.
But we also know where the limits are, and that's why we're kind of drawing the line, saying, okay, we got to get some stories in here. We got to make this meaningful for us, because if it's meaningful for us, it'll be meaningful for listeners as well, I think. At least that's the way I always look at it. So, okay, well, we've got our work cut out for us. That's good. We'll obviously be reconnecting Tuesday night. Before we leave, do you want to give people who are interested in more personal approach, something that has a more human approach to it, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, if you're going through anything in your life where you would like to have some help working with law of attraction and understanding how you might alter your own life experience in a way that serves you better and brings more happiness and joy into your life, I offer a free 1-hour coaching session that you can have with me. And then from that, you can decide if you want to do any further coaching with me. But you can go to my website, which is youarejoy.com. And that's the words YOUAREJOY, youarejoy.com. And there's a way you can sign up. You'll see that on my website for a free coaching session with me.
Beautiful. Tom, been a pleasure. Let's do it Tuesday night.
Okay, Walt, thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.